And what impressed me most is the insistence of Father General on the intellectual apostolate. I think on one hand this is a call coming from the Pope and from the Church. On the other hand, we have seen a kind of evolution in the last 20 years within the society. Intellectual apostolate was maybe a bit contested in the 70s or early 80s, but now we rediscover this apostolate as an important apostolate, and Father General has been insisting a lot on this aspect. Well, I suppose that in the 70s and 80s, people often considered intellectual apostolate as an apostolate in an ivory tower, not related to issues of justice or to faith. But now we rediscover that, in fact, in fields of justice and faith and other aspects of life, this is a very important apostolate. And I would add also that the whole field of science, technology, is a very interesting way to enter into dialogue with the world. And so there are many developments in the field of intellectual work outside the society, in the world, that challenges us. And constantly we are challenged by these new developments. I give one example. One of the aspects that is very important at this moment is, for instance, neurobiology. I attended a conference on meditation in different cultures. So meditation in Buddhism, in Judaism, in Christianity, in Asian cultures and so on. But there were also some scientists, some medical doctors, and they do very scientific research. And within the field of medicine, there is an enormous increase of articles on what is meditation from a scientific medical point of view. What happens in our brains when we meditate with visual material, when we meditate with our words and so on. And I think this is very important to be aware of these developments, because this can also help us in our own apostolates. If we, for instance, spiritual exercises are so important, then we have to be aware of what is going on in these fields to challenge us and to enter into dialogue with the world. Yeah. My own research is basically on the context between China and Europe in the 17th century and 18th century. So that's the time of Matteo Ricci and other many famous Jesuits. But my point of view is not in the first place how does the missionary go to China, but rather how did the Chinese shape these missionaries to become who they became. I give one example. We talk about Matteo Ricci as someone who practiced the method of accommodation. He adapted himself to the local culture. And then we see as if there is a missionary and he adapts into the local culture. But when we look at the history, it happened through an interaction. And it is not, at the beginning, Matteo Ricci was rather, let's say, conservative, because he did not intend to adapt so much. But it were the Chinese collaborators, the Chinese Christians and non-Christians, that made him to adapt. And so this kind of research, I think, is also important for us today. We are talking about collaboration with others, which is a major theme of the 35th General Congregation, and which is also discussed here. How to discover that others are shaping the society and are shaping us as Jesuits in such a way that we probably become more Jesuits and more Ignatian, but not only by our own self, but by how we interact with others, and especially how others shape us. So I think regarding the intellectual apostolate, one can distinguish between the sector and the dimension. The sector means the Jesuits who are more specialized and are more focused on this aspect. For instance, those who are working in universities, and not only in universities, sometimes also in periodicals, in editions that we have, but they are a little bit more specialized in it. Now, regarding this aspect, there are many changes and also many questions that we try to share about here. When we look at what is going on in this world of universities and of research, we discover that we are surrounded by young people who are doing very well research, but as Jesuits we often have a kind of we are in delay because we have our own formation. And it's only when you are 35 or maybe 40 when you enter in a university, if you can enter into a university, you see. Another problem is, for instance, that very often we train people in a PhD, but then they never use their PhD. So these are aspects that Father General and also we together, we are talking and thinking about on how to adapt according to what is going on in the world today, our own training of people within the sector of intellectual apostolate. But the other aspect that is very important is the dimension. And Father General insisted on the fact that, in fact, intellectual apostolate should be part as a dimension in any apostolate. So what is, to explain that with a concrete example, what is the difference between, let's say, parish priest that is a Jesuit and another parish priest, or someone working in a prison as a Jesuit and another person working in a prison? What we can see here is that we all have what one calls the duty of intelligence. We all have got such an enormous training and the richness of being able to think. So within our spirituality, we are called to reflect on what we are doing. But this reflection on what we are doing has also a universal dimension. Because when I have to reflect and express that in one way or another, I enter into dialogue with people at the other side of the world. If someone working in a parish in Belgium can reflect and write or exchange about it, this can be relevant for someone, a Jesuit in the Philippines, and the other way around. And so Father General insists rightly that some people are more in a sector, but just like I would say spiritual exercises, just as the option for the poor, the intellectual apostolate could be or should be a dimension for any Jesuit.